Welcome, everyone, to a wonderful opportunity to spend some time with Ali, with her collection of what I call schmatas, pieces of fabric, which she has consistently been able to transform magically into so many places and spaces and experiences that have enhanced all of our lives. It's been a wonderful, I think, 45 years, 44 years of working together. And the title, The Art of Friendship, really talks about the friendship between Ali and us, the gallery and her art, and the people who have been drawn to her work are exceptionally sensitive to her ability to raise visual images that connect with their lives in a way that I don't think she understands, and certainly I don't. But the opportunity simply to sit and talk with you today with her, and also to move into the world that she has defined for herself, both in terms of space, materials, opportunities to explore what art can be, which is the exposure of questions about our humanity and viability and survival. So that's pretty heavy duty, but not intended to overload Ali with that, but simply to say that this is such a wonderful opportunity to be together and to have an opportunity to speak about the work. So Ali's on screen. I think we can show the first slide and go from there. So the title of the show, Friendship, brings to mind a quote of Brother Thomas's, that the most enduring gift is the gift of friendship. And from his perspective, such a blessing only a divine reality could create. With or without the divine, the notion that art itself can create bonds and relationships and friendships is pretty amazing. And we just chose these three pieces to begin and to ask Ali just to, I think, wander through how she got to this set of images, some older and then one very recent one, and then we'll go from there.
Okay. Well, the whole waterfall idea started, and there's some other ones with rocks and cliffs and things. I like waterfalls. I did a rafting trip on the Colorado River for a week, and we stopped at different places, and you took a hike, and all of a sudden there would be the most amazing waterfall in this incredible setting. And I thought, well, maybe I can do something with waterfalls. I mean, it really started that whole series. And these three pieces are done at different times. The middle piece was about a year or so ago. And I was in New Hampshire, was at the Kangamunga Highway. But kids were jumping into the water at a couple of the parts, the watering holes. And it was just pretty amazing to see the figures up on the rocks and then looking over the edge and thinking, yeah, I'll jump. So I did a few more with larger figures just because having witnessed what they were messing around with, I kind of changed. They jumped into water that didn't have rocks at the bottom, but that's how the whole thing started.
So when did you take the trip down to Colorado?
Ooh, it's been a while. I actually did, I think it's the date of, I don't know, 15 years ago, at least, maybe longer.
So by that time you were flying airplanes or flying in airplanes?
I wasn't flying them, might have been in them, yes.
Okay, because that becomes relevant later. In any event, and the two side pieces, you talked about your attraction to waterfalls. but can you talk a little bit about how you think to transform what you see into these works of art?
Great question.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I like, well, a lot of the fabrics are sheer, translucent, transparent. I started at one point using plastic. And I was thinking I can build it up and drawing on the plastic and overlaying the whole thing to try and get that sort of water density, just trying different things. And the ferns, I wanted that sort of tropical environment. I actually printed some of the, took actual ferns, inked them up on with black ink and printed the whole image onto a piece of bright green fabric and cut out the fern. So I did like a bunch of them are a combination of actual printed pieces I did and then fabric that I cut out pieces and sort of collaged it in.
So Lorie, could you talk just a little bit about your response to these three pieces?
Oh, I'm just amazed at the texture of the different fabrics and how they work together to feel so translucent, and the energy and the motion that she gets. You just feel that cascade. You just you just are part of it. I love the splashing in the middle one, the stuff at the surface. I mean, her observations are the detail is so accurate. It's amazing to me that you can do that, Ali. But I really, go ahead.
No, it's just thinking, and the fact that then you move back a step and say, well, wait a minute, these are just pieces of fabric.
Yeah, yeah.
I know that we think traditionally about paint, and you apply paint and then translucence and varnishes and so forth. But here, the capacity to visualize and then achieve the space and the experience, and then go back to the fact that it's fabric, is pretty remarkable. And I love the fact that, Ali, when you get to a point where you want to achieve something, then you're okay with printing the image of a fern on green and cutting it out. In other words, there has to be somewhere embedded in your imagination where you want to end up.
Yeah.
And that part to me is incredible. I love it about all artists, but it's incredibly fascinating to see it realized, because the next slide will go into Pandora's box. Those and studio. So just in case anybody thinks it's a romantic adventure, Ali, you want to take us on a tour of your studio?
Well, I cleaned up for this. There's parts you cannot see, just so I'd have a surface. But all the fabric is basically in bins with labels, and I tried to organize it according to color and texture and water or clouds, or so I kind of had an idea of where I might find what I'm looking for. And I got flooded this past November by Hurricane Ian. Everything went underwater, all the fabrics, and I saved most of it. Spent a lot of time at the laundromat, hours and hours. I saved most of it, and then I had to go back and reorganize, which was good. I found things I didn't know I even had in the studio, but it was interesting to see just what I had collected.
I would think it's kind of a diary that is fabricated, so to speak, that you have memories, I'm sure, of Chinatown here, of shops there, of used clothing shops, and even picking up the fabric must bring back to you the memories of having acquired them. And then from our perspective as viewers, how you transform them, which is a miracle.
And Ali, where's all the tulle? Are they in the bins too, or do you have them in rolls?
in here somewhere, I have like at least 2 bins full of netting and tulle, and
Yeah, because
I have one with yarns. I have one with jackets, or 1 or 2. I
okay.
have with sparkly stuff. I have one with gold and silver. I have plants, black and white plant forms, black and white pebbles, green water, sheer pattern things.
Fantastic.
I'm just looking around. Gray blends, sheer
So
blend.
if we go to the next slide, there you go. And you
Yeah,
have a clearer sense of the bins. And then I think one of your resources on the
That's
left.
thrift shops here, and there's just such an assortment of weird stuff. You know, you just go through the racks because it's not like a store where people have bought certain things and they have 4 or 5 sizes. It's just donations, and I get to recycle, which I like the idea. I don't get big pieces when it's clothing. But I'm using very small pieces now. The larger background things, normally I do have to go to a fabric store.
To create the full space.
Just
And
me,
then
I mean, it's sort of like, what can I use? So I come up with things that normally I would not think about if I had to just create it from scratch in terms of color and texture.
so when you see something on the rack, do you immediately have an inspiration of what you could do with it? Or do you just think, oh, maybe someday I can use that, or
Both.
both?
There's certain things I buy when I see them because I know at some point I will use them. And some stuff just sits there for a long
For
time.
a long time.
But sometimes I go out and I really start looking for a certain kind of pattern, and and I might find it or not. But
Okay.
But
That's
part of
great.
it has to do with accident and also intentionality.
Right.
And at least my sense of it is, and I've said this often in the gallery, that I don't know what your next piece will look like. I don't know that you know what your next piece will look like.
I do not know. I might have an idea, but by the end of it, it may be completely different because I have a happy accident and think, well, this isn't so bad doing this. I don't usually know exactly what's going to happen. In fact, I never know.
Well, the end result is pretty good. It's good to have a deadline so that you do have to finish
Exactly.
certain things by a
Exactly.
certain time. However, the next thing we're going to look at is something called Beyond the Deadline.
This was amazing to see these, Ali.
Well, see, that background was a t-shirt, and I knew that colors is something I use often. And I was doing the purses or starting, and I thought, okay, upside down, sideways. So the thing about collage is that you can pin it. You can pin it on the wall and look at it and then move it. So you're not really committed to scraping the paint off and
Yeah.
move everything around till it starts to make some kind of sense.
But can talk about the t-shirt upside down and how this begins to evolve for you as you're working on it.
I would love that, to hear that.
Oh, well,
So-
it's about space again. Sometimes I have the darker color at the top, but it just seemed to make more sense to put it at the bottom. I think that's what I did, yes. It just felt better. So things get brighter and start floating off into the space. It just felt better having the dark at the bottom than the top.
Did the patterning on the purse, those swirls, did that influence what was going to come out of the purse?
It did. This was a little beaded bag, and I cut it in half. That's why I have 2 versions.
Yeah, that's so brilliant.
And all those swirls were great. I mean, I thought, well, I did. I mean, I played off that.
The other thing that is important to point out to people is that there are so many different ways to create a work of art. And so this is a wonderful insight into just one of those ways. It's not the only way, but I think
Mhm.
it emphasizes, at least for me, the issue of attentiveness and responsiveness, and
Mhm.
the ability to see what you have done so that you'll know what you might want to do next, and then realize that that may not be right either. So it's a conversation that I'm so thrilled that people have an opportunity to really just
Yeah.
watch you have, Ali, as your process, not a sort of Brady Crocker, this is how you make it
Mhm.
process.
Exactly.
It's a wonderful invitation for people to feel the freedom of creation in the context of who they are, whatever
Yep.
that may mean. So we can move on, but I just wanted to respond that way. Here we go.
This is more of what's going to work. And I like the idea of the spiral. I was trying out different backgrounds. I think this was the second side of the purse because the other one I did go with the gray, dark gray to light gray. So this
Right.
I was come up with another background. So I think I went with the one on the right, which is
The starry sky.
right.
And
And
how does that,
Ali,
yeah, go ahead.
we have a question from one of the viewers. They want to know, Ali, how long you've been working with fabric and mixed media.
Um,
Long time.
about, well, when I first started showing at the gallery, here was that.
I think it's 77.
Yeah, so about 76 at least. I think before
Well,
77, 70, maybe 75.
so Ali, let me just share with you a story from someone who knew you in high school in
What?
Yarmouth. This is years ago. A guy came in and he said, "Oh, I remember her. She was beautiful, but she was a little weird because she used to sew. She used to sew all the time." So my
What?
guess is, I'll tell you his name offline.
All
But in
right.
any event, but it was a really interesting thing. I don't know if you remember it, but he remembers you having been a sewer. And somehow I said, wow, that's pretty remarkable that, 20, 30 years later, it reappears as part of your way of expressing yourself.
The only sewing I did in high school is I think I took home ec and we had to make a dress with a machine.
Well, it's either you made an impression on him or that made an impression on him.
I don't know.
That's funny. Were you using fabric before you went to the museum school in your art?
No, not really, but I like making things.
Yeah.
Just putting stuff together, but not the way I'm using it now. No.
Well, Ali, I would also, I just went through photographs of most of your work in order to get it organized a bit. And the Chine Collé prints are, again, first laying down collage of handmade papers and then doing the monoprint on top of it. So the notion of texture, whether it's paper, whether it's fabric, seems to be very much your way of speaking. And so one relates to the other very consistently, I think. And I just want to say as a side note that in looking at those works, I was blown away. I don't think it's a good thing for you to do, but I can tell you that there are so many extraordinary pieces, the Day of the Dead pieces in Mexico, the acrobats, the circus, articulating through the process, and it's at the same time remaining true to your artistic vision is remarkable. And I just needed to tell you that because I didn't realize it till I sat here with 100 pieces of paper and saw a different image every time. So it's very, very impressive.
That's right.
You didn't need that, but that's okay.
I totally agree with that.
Let's look at the next slide too.
Well, I was still trying to figure out what the background was going to be. Yeah, spirals. I had that black fabric with the blue, and I thought, no, I didn't use it. That's just another shirt or a piece of the skirt or something that had sort of a tie-dye pattern on it.
Mm.
So
But there's a lot
Thi-
of trial and error at the beginning.
A lot, yes.
And so that's an important, Lorie, thing to, I
Mhm.
think, emphasize for people who are looking. That
Mhm.
it doesn't always come out the way you want it
Mhm.
the first time, but process in this case has a very positive connotation for me.
Yeah.
That
Too.
the ability to sort of dance and go back to the dance and back to
Yeah.
the dance until you've really assembled all that you want in the way you want it, and then have the gallery say, please send it now. So you have to stop.
And when are you concerned with the conceptual part of the work? Does it come to you while you're working, or is it not even important until later? I mean, what you could be communicating.
I don't think about it that much. I have some idea of an image, but I don't really translate it into definite thoughts about,
What it means.
right. Vague.
Let's look at the next piece. Or next slide, sorry. So what do we got here, Ali? Looks like a bunch of,
I was sewing it down. So yeah, that piece is pretty much finished. Everything's sewn eventually, like pins and a little bit of it's like a fusing thing. If I need to keep something flat, I can bond it with like stitch witchery or whatever they call it, but mostly all the pieces are sewn down, including
And
the,
did you use the frame of the purse to make it look like it was the back of the purse?
I
Or
did
is
use-
that, yeah, that works so well. And the flames coming out, the illusion of that is amazing.
and
And
it sort of unleashes the universe.
yeah.
right. Well, that's Pandora's box for me, or this is Pandora's purse. Open it up and see what happens. And this one in the matching or the second version, I was thinking about time change again. So this one was going to be spring ahead and the other one will be fall back.
Mhm.
I love
With
it.
the strings.
But
And the little bit of warm color that you see through the side of the purse, I mean, I'm sure you applicate something on top of it, but it just feels so much like it's warming up from inside.
That's just an overlay, like sheer netting to give it
Yeah.
that.
That's your magic,
among other things. But for
among other
sure,
things. But the way
yeah.
she can get light and shadow and just this glow with the netting,
Exactly.
that's her, blows my mind.
And it's also very wonderful because I think most of us don't think about being in intense sunlight and having it blot out all the color. So the only place that color shows is in the shadows.
Well, that's
And
interesting.
vividly, I remember this from when we first opened the gallery, and an Israeli artist named Yona Mach would do these blazing pieces, almost all yellows and ivories. And the only real color was in the shadow of a wall. And so the idea that our world is defined by lights and darks, shadows and brightness, but these pieces keep a visual energy alive because they are part of the image itself, and that's part of the world we live in. We just don't pay attention to it.
Mhm.
Next one. There it is.
Love it.
Yeah, that's just sort of in progress.
The whole place.
It is always.
I love that. So
I love
give
that. I love seeing that.
give a sense of the scale of the room itself, Ali.
I'm so good on. I'd say it's about maybe 15 across by 20 somewhere around there. It's really a rectangle, and then I have French doors at each end.
Right. But it looks like a high ceiling.
I do. Well, there's a bit of a slant. They're high.
And
I-
is the surface of the walls like padded so you can pin into it?
well,
Or
what
is
I'm
it foam core? Is it drywall?
to have no drywall anymore. It
Mhm.
holds.
That's true.
This is actually, it's a pink styrofoam insulation that you buy in big sheets.
Oh,
Painted it white, and it works as insulation, also as a bulletin board.
yeah, brilliant.
Wonderful. Well,
Wall is just the insulation.
yeah, sheetrock or Homosote would not be good with the amount of water you had.
No,
yeah.
this whole wall was really well insulated at one point. There's another space on the other side, and after the 1.5 floods, everything went. All the insulation, all the sheetrock.
Oh, what a nightmare.
Oh, it's much better now.
Wonderful. Let's look at the next the images, and just speak about them, because these are, I think, I hate to say it, are they almost done?
Yes.
Good.
The one on my left, fall back, hasn't been sewn down in this particular photograph, but it is done. Yeah, it's a little extra piece hanging off, and the one on the right is almost done too, but not completely. Part of the clock on the right, I hadn't fastened down. It's behind me. I don't know if you can see it.
Mm.
Not so much, but it's okay. We have good images here.
Ali, when you finish them, do you back them with something, or you
I put them on foam core.
put them on foam core? Okay.
Yeah.
And then send them to the gallery frame shop and get them into the world, which is the next step or two we get to. Let's look at the next two.
Ah, love these.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So where are these in process, Ali, and what are your
Well,
thoughts about them?
The one on the right is pretty much finished. I may or may not add something else to it. This one, but it's pretty much done. And then the one on my left, the one with the blue, I'm going to add a few more things, but it's pretty.
So that's optimistic.
No, well, it's always optimistic, but yes, I'm almost done. I'm close.
The
Sounds
fabric,
really good.
the fabric that you use in the one on the left, the landscape, is like an old English brocade or something. I don't know, but it gives it so much dimension, and then it continues into the person, and there's that warmth again that feels like it's glowing through. That one's, I think, is really successful.
Thank you. Well, a purse is an antique, and it is that needlepoint stuff. And then I found that the background, I think it had been framed in some thrift shop, and I ripped it out of
fantastic.
because it was the same kind of, pattern of fabric, not hand done, but it had that sort of it had the same feeling.
And are those the forms that look like tree branches? Are those drawing marks? These aggressive lines that suddenly break it up.
The part with the smoke, the white.
Yeah, with the white background and it looks like branches.
The fabric, pretty translucent fabric that I used, overlaid it. And then there's some marks with pencil or charcoal, but most of it's just fabric.
Great.
Well,
so
this is really, I think, the dessert first, and then we're going to go back to the main course. But it was a wonderful way for us to now, I think, even more appreciate the works that you have created over these past 4 or 5 decades And the show, out of necessity because of the flood and so forth, has fewer new pieces. And we took the opportunity to create a sense of your journey. And so we'll begin with, not in chronological order, just, and I love seeing the pieces on the screen. It's a huge piece. And at the same time, being able to have it at a size on my screen that I can see it all at once, the intensity of the light, the placement of the shadows, the light coming through against the wall. So that's enough for me. Lorie, you want to speak about it? And then Ali, just a bit.
This is an example of the way she gets these deep, deep spaces, the scale switch from being in the room to the far distance that you see through the doorway. The wallpaper, the vintage floral, gives such a different mood than the palm trees and, I don't know, sun-baked landscape outside. But that sparkling light, I never have the word for it, the dappled light that is just Ali's magic again. I just am amazed when I look at something like this. The subtle light on the wall on the left,
Right, that's
the
wonderful.
checkerboard floor, the use of the tool to darken, but you still see the pattern through it. And then the palette change from these sort of brick red darks to that lavender pink. I don't know, how do you get those ideas? How do you figure this out? It's amazing. But I think your play with space is really apparent in this one.
Everything kind of grows from, there's like a progression. So one piece sort of leads to the next one. Like there might be something I like about something I had just done, like those kind of lights. I did that in the series too, which gives a dimension. And it just leads to, what if I did a big room and then the light is here, and you know, it's kind of abstract the way I think about it. Like rectangles within rectangles, and then break up the space and change it.
I hope that people can pay attention to the definition, the lines, which in this piece are just pieces of yarn or thread.
Yes.
So the notion that it just serves you, or you have figured out how to find the way to do what you want to do, is just wonderful. So there's a kind of magic to it that none of us could ever anticipate. And I think in art, I think about, sometimes people say, well, what about a Harvard Business School study of the gallery? And I'd say the same things. There is no Harvard Business School study to your process. There is simply an instinctive evolution of your own visual integrity to make the next step. And that, I just always am in awe of that.
Yeah, me too.
Capacity to create. And, you know, this is 54 years of the gallery and probably well over 100 artists, but your work and the way that you do work on it is entirely different than so many other people. And I just hope that people who are looking at the work and having it small scale on your screen really is a wonderful way to really sort of taste it. It's so delicious in its own way that I hope that comes through in this piece. I mean, now looking at the few specks of light on the ceiling, which I'd never even looked at before. So I just think that you make it happen, but it isn't, so to speak, premeditated.
Yeah.
It's a part of process. And it's a very encouraging way, I think, for many people. The path that draws you from the checkerboard all the way into an infinite horizon. Every particular detail is somehow, it looks like you knew what you were doing. Let's look at the next one.
Yeah, same thing again, that dappled light. You see the patterning, but it's submerged in these bright little spots. It's mysterious. This one feels like it's part of a circus, but something's floating in there, and where are these lights coming from? But it's so pleasing. It's so entertaining. It's like candy for your eye.
That's a wonderful way to think about it. And the notion of circus, there was an exhibit, Ali, that we put your work in, I think in Milwaukee, on circus themes.
Mm,
And the circus thing, you suspend your willingness because people can float through the air. And so here there are no people.
right.
And yet you feel the levitation of the board, the circle, the ball, all these things are in movement. And yet fundamentally, it's a very static way to work. So the design, the composition, the vertical lines in the background, every piece of it seems like, again, you knew what you were doing.
Yeah.
How do you
think
feel about it? It's a long time ago you did this.
work finally. I didn't know I had.
Did you create those little dots by slitting through the tool, the netting?
I did, because the background is actually very bright. And then
Mhm.
there's a dark black or brown chiffon over the whole piece. And then I cut out those circles.
How did you think to do that? You probably can't even remember. You don't know yet. That's brilliant.
I don't know. I think people have done things like this. But yeah, it just made sense. It's really like a stencil in a way. You're
Yes.
just getting back to the next layer. So
Yeah.
book screen, you put something over, but you block out. It's the reverse.
Right.
So look at, if Carolyn, we can go back to the last slide and this slide. Look at the definition of space and
Mhm.
how it's realized between the two of them. Here, the sense of your eye moving all the way back,
Mhm.
and the sort of lines moving toward the scene in the background. And then the circus image, totally different.
Yeah.
I mean, it's rather extraordinary that you didn't
Mhm.
need the space itself is totally transformed by the way you see the space. And it's wonderful.
That's wonderful.
Let's move on.
The mask. So I actually own this piece, and it works for me in so many levels. I think the overall, because it's on its side like that, is it sleeping? Is it dead? Is it sad? It's a happy smile, but it feels sad. The object in the space, the way the little light flickers actually follow the contour of the face. You feel the shape of that nose and the side of the face. They're not just random, they're actually going in the direction of the form. And then again, that edge, it's thread, it's like a yarn that she outlined along the bottom, and then that little bit of shadow right under that. It's magic. We keep using that word, but that's how it feels to me. And
I love the little strand of the tie.
The
That kind
tie,
of it worms its way across and introduces light
and
and
those
shadow.
little bit of highlights.
Exactly. So Ali, now it's your turn.
Well, I collect stuff. This was actually a paper mache mask that we spent a lot of time in Mexico, and I collected masks, paper mache, and it just had a presence. But the mask is hanging up in my studio.
You still have it? Oh, that's so cool.
I still have it. Yeah.
And
Wonderful.
Jack Clift, Ali's late husband, was a teacher of mine. And I think this was done after he passed away. And I think that was another level of giving it more meaning to me.
Interesting.
Yeah.
But that is in part, Brother Thomas has a quote that I love, that memory is more permanent than matter.
Yeah,
And
beautiful.
the notion that this image recalls for you all of Jack and your relationship and your friendship, that if art can do that in any kind of way, then it really is what it's about.
That's
it
right.
is both informing our lives, enriching our lives. And these works which again, circus, mask, room, palm tree, are the objects that are only the vocabulary for us to be able to experience things in a
Right.
very human and a very direct way. So it's rather extraordinary. I'm glad that Lorie, you
Mhm.
suggested we include it.
Mm-hmm.
So next piece where we go to a whole different area.
Mm-hmm. The still
So
lifes. So
absolutely.
I see in this again, that deep, deep space, the little people in the way back. But I think the way you create the table, the form of the table with the surfaces, I mean, I think that's just a flat piece of patterned fabric with the fruit, but you shade it and you leave the little light coming through, and those two pieces of fruit could be a little past their prime. I mean, it creates this resonance of like decay and shading, and like that. The words can't describe it, but it's again
But,
the beauty of it is overwhelming too. It's just beautiful.
and very small. I mean, if they hope people are looking at the measurements to get a sense of transition and scale. And it
Oh,
also deals with the ephemeral nature of life itself or
yeah,
death.
yeah,
The chair is empty
yes,
and by itself. So it allows us the opportunity in a very strange way to
mm-hmm.
reflect on our own lives.
That's
And the still life is particularly that sort of vanitas, the passage of time, the decaying of the fruit, and then the empty chair sitting there
yeah,
silently. And if art can do that in any way whatsoever, can recenter you
yeah,
to your own humanness and
yeah,
your vulnerability, then I
yeah,
think it's a miracle. And these pieces, again, I go back to the beginning, they're schmata paintings. They're pieces of fabric that are just simply laid down one another, but there's so much more in it.
yeah.
And it's not, and I'm in many ways glad that Ali never had to teach, because it's not teachable.
No, no,
And so that issue, the next still life is really pretty remarkable too, Caroline.
no, yeah.
Ali, what do you think?
What was your question?
So what do
I-
you think? I mean, how does this come about at all?
Yeah.
I don't know. I think it was a time when, I don't know, I had some issues, but it's still part of the ongoing series that I do. And it's another tablecloth that is one, it's just flat. And I made all the shading, make it look like it was just blowing in the wind.
Yeah, the motion.
Sort of things not going the way you want them to, and disappearing with time. And, it's like a state of mind, really.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
And the lightning bolt, you didn't embellish it at all. It's just this sharp cut through, but that's lightning.
It is. It's sort of out of nowhere. And I
Yeah.
debate whether I wanted to do that or not. I'm still undecided whether it was better with it or without it. So
I
it's
love it.
not going
It's
anywhere.
wonderful.
It's
You're
wonderful.
right.
And
I mean, I can give you a magic marker and you can paint it in. But
Right.
also the notion of the glasses, the translucence of them, the spilled on the table, and then this floating document, if you will.
yeah, that's
Do you have any, how that kind of happened?
Well, I did some others with things floating. It's
Right.
like letters and just blowing in the wind, things people have written and sent to friends or people they love. And somehow the papers are just out there floating off into space, like time is moving on.
and you feel this, you're like a severing in a relationship, or there's an emotion that's something is broken, and you really translate that beautifully, communicate that.
Yeah. And also the sky itself
I
is
know,
very
gorgeous.
different than any other skies that I can remember in your work, because usually they're kind of more fluffy, rounded clouds. Here, there's a jagged quality to them
Jake.
that, yeah, just, and then the pieces of glass are
Mhm.
poignant and pointing in a way to something that has occurred, may occur, may not occur. But it allows us again to step back and say, where am I? Who am I? What am I doing? And then sort of how do I think of sandbox work, which is a work of brokenness, but you have the pieces and how do I reconfigure them? I'm not going to be the same, but I can rebuild and re-energize, taking the pieces that were there. Anyway, next piece. I love this.
I love it. Oh yeah.
So Lorie, I remember you enjoyed it when you were
Yeah,
young.
it's hard to see in the photo, but in the center, that black area is this velvet that just sucks in the light, as opposed to the other surfaces. That some of them reflect the light, some of them are these. The sky is fragmented and it's floating in front of them, but the use of the texture of that velvet juxtaposed with all this other stuff is so fantastic. And the fact that the blue sky is raining down in front of the landscape. I don't know. What were you thinking, Ali? What caused you to break it up like that?
Well, I'd already done things floating around. Somehow, the sky is falling.
The sky is falling,
Like a
yeah.
black hole, and then the sky is, it's falling. That's it.
That's it.
Chicken
And
Little.
Right, I love
you
that.
have some charcoal marks in this one too that I just feel like it's so daring. You weren't being timid at all. You were really being bold here.
And I know I moved the slides around quick, but right here, this is just a photo that
The
I took on my
detail.
phone, but you can see this.
Yes.
Yeah, there's that folding that Lorie was talking about in
Yeah.
that velvet piece, which
Yeah.
comes alive when you see it in person. Unfortunately, in this, the velvet's so rich, the light just gets eaten.
Yeah, right.
But
Good
Oh,
you
detail.
can see it a little bit in here.
Thank you
And
so
that-
much. That's really great. Oh, good. I see the detail. Okay, we'll move on to the next one, please. So Ali, this is one of your jumping waterfall people.
Yes.
Yes. There's so much stitching in the background that creates the overall texture of the rocks around it.
Mhm.
The surfaces are just so alive. There was a whole period of time when people were looking at art and saying, well, you must look at the brush strokes, this, to that, and here it is,
Mhm.
with no kind of drum roll. It just energizes the entire surface of the piece itself. So that's enough of me. Lorie?
The glowing color in the water juxtaposed with this dark surrounding rock and whatever it is, you didn't repeat that color anywhere, and it just isolates you. Your eye just can live in that. And there's a playfulness to this one. The gal that's going to hit that water, and I just love the juxtaposition of the surfaces and the depth that you have. And again, that deep black, I think, was that the velvet too behind the figure?
That is black, yes, because it has such an absence of color. It gives you a almost. It's hard to photograph. And then the water, I had a piece of fabric which kind of said this is water. It had the blue turquoise sort of intervening with the brown shapes on it, and it was water. I mean, I think it was a skirt I found, but I used that whole section and built the painting around that water.
And the little edge of foam that hits the rocks, what is that done with thread or fabric, or how did you do that?
I think just a little bit of probably white, but maybe edge of lace or something that had a little,
something edgy.
and some white, little white thread, but mostly it was cut out and just
But what I'm now seeing, which I didn't and when I saw the piece itself, is the isolated collection of boulders or stones that
Yeah,
have light on them. And they're sort of dancing in a circle around the
yeah,
figure that's coming down vertically. And again, I often say this, when I see it on the screen, I see the whole picture.
yeah.
And when you experience it, you get your eyes kind of go to different places.
You
But
get
that
caught up
goes,
in the surface of texture. Yeah,
yep,
I agree. It's nice to see them in from a reduced scale. Or is that the reflection of the legs that I see in the water, or is that just
Yeah.
something under the water?
No, it was the
The
reflection.
reflection, yeah, I didn't notice that when I looked at it
Some of
before.
the dark is coming forward.
Yeah,
But it's very hard to photograph it because there's so many levels. It's
yeah,
a little bit stronger than that, I think, in the actual piece than it is in the photo. But
well, sure works.
that's
the-
why we sell. That's why we sell the original. It's okay.
That's right.
Let's move on to the next one, please, which was one of the cover pieces. I love this piece. Coming back to it,
Love
Ali.
this piece too.
I think it's the sense of movement, the translucence. You really feel that you could get some of the spray on you.
Mhm.
And look at,
That's true.
and it's just the way that you've even sort of bent the tops so that you feel the water pouring down. It's
Yeah.
just breathtaking. So Ali, you talk about it. You don't need me.
thank you. I wanted that feeling. And there's something mesmerizing about waterfalls. I mean, I could just
Mhm.
stand there and keep looking. And I was just trying to get that sense of there's no noise, it's a quiet waterfall. That
Right.
sense of force of
Mhm.
it's pretty magical what happened.
Mhm.
Even if you say so yourself.
Well,
Just
this one has some plastic in it. There's something about it just has a sort of water texture if you overlay it. I have little strips added in for that.
I
And
think it works
I
so well.
feel the atmosphere, when you're by a waterfall, there's that mist that comes off of it. I feel that in this. I mean, I know that the gravity is forcing this rush of water, but then there's this almost like a mist in front of it. And it's incredible. And the
Absolutely.
very hazy color you see through.
In the lower
Did
area.
this take a long time? Did you do a lot of trial and error to get, or was it
This
just
one,
happen?
I think this one went fairly quickly. I've been doing series, so this one actually went quickly for me. And I put in a little person. Forgot.
Yeah,
I
that little bitty person
Just-
there.
Fantastic. The triptych, which we're going to look at next, I really want to get people to enjoy
Yeah. Yeah.
and have Ali speak a bit about it. Again, and I would also remind people that the subjects are for me, the least important part of the pieces.
Yeah.
They are works of art. And this is a perfect example for me of exactly that. Ali?
Well, it's sort of a made up place. I was looking at some driftwood that had such great shapes, and I had done a few, I don't know, fast drawings. I had them kicking around. There was something about those sticks in the space. For me, it's sort of the beach,
Mhm.
water and one of them in the background. I think of it as being along the beach, maybe at low tide. Just a place that I've sort of been to, but I made it up.
Right. And
It's
Lorie,
very
how do you
different.
respond to it?
It's very different than your other work, Ali. There's a barren feeling, but it's also the nature, the beauty of the nature in these places. It's spiritual. And I love the variation of the sky that moves through. The horizon is kind of the same, but the the light in the sky and the time of day is different. But I feel that this is, it's communing with nature, and there is a spirituality to this one, to these, for me.
Absolutely. And there's also a sense of aridity. There's
Mhm.
each of
Yes.
them are undressed, if you will. There's no bark particularly. The one on the left could be people dancing. It's hard to know, but you're suddenly in a space that you've never been in before, in a really remarkable way. And then you can say, well, wait a minute, this is just a triptych, but it's not. And I think that that's sort of where I feel the work consistently goes.
Mhm.
We have a couple more. I just want to share the next one. Yeah.
Love this one. The
So
scale of the flower, you go right back again to this deep space. The edge, the little shadow coming off on the right.
yeah,
But the
perfect.
way
Yeah.
the way she creates with the light and shadow, the flower, it's so powerful and it's so simple.
So now what are you going to say, Ali? You're up.
What am I going to say? I actually, this is an amaryllis, but it's a white one, and it was blooming in my backyard,
Mm.
Florida, and I did, I think, 3 versions. I did one more with the buds. I mean, it's just a beautiful flower. I did 2 or 3 different pieces. I did another large one with another kind of a lily, big lily thing with this wildflower on it. I was kind of just looking at it. It hasn't come back. I think, I don't know what happened. It came back a few times and then it just died off somewhere. But it was growing.
So they grow in the ground where you live, not in a pot?
No, it was in the ground.
Wow. I always think of them, you have to put the bulb in a pot. That's amazing.
No, and they multiply like other bulbs. Some people have a whole garden with them, but
Oh,
I
great.
didn't.
I just want to call people's attention to each of the 2 blossoms
Yeah.
and the use of the shadows to
Yeah.
define those forms. We have a beautiful bouquet someone sent me the other day. And if you look attentively at each of the petals, and this does exactly the same thing, it invites you into looking at these petals as forms, as abstractions, and as amaryllis. The magic of being able to, again, take the fabric and then make something that invites us into that is really pretty remarkable. So we're going to end with some more flowers and just a glorious piece. May have too much light on it for you, Ali, but
Oh,
I
it's
just
okay.
wanted, it's okay. All right. So let's have you and then Lorie speak about it and then I'll finish up.
Well, this is a continuation of my jacket pieces. And the jacket is actually blue, dark blue with sparkles on it, which I wouldn't wear it, but it was quite interesting. And I was thinking of night skies. And some of you may know that the sunflower is a symbol of the Ukraine. And I was thinking about the Ukraine and all that they're going through, and that's where it comes from. It just kind of grew a lot of different phases, and then it just seemed to make sense to use this sunflower, and it's still coming up regardless of what's going on in the world. They're still growing, and I hope they continue to grow.
Interestingly enough, when you said that about Ukraine, the background in the jacket suddenly becomes the sky, illuminated not by the sun or the stars, but by an explosion.
Yeah. Wow.
It certainly changes the reference point
Yes.
just with that little bit of information.
Yeah.
So
I
go ahead, Lorie.
felt sadness to this one, even though it has these shocks of bright color and the bright electric blue of, I don't know if those are little petals inside the towards the center of the lower half.
Oh,
but
they were butterflies.
Oh, the butterflies. Yes, now I see that. The electric blue with that bright yellow. They're, what do they call them? Opposite colors on the color wheel, and they're so electric. But the overall dark that surrounds it just gives it a sadness. And I really understand now when you say that it's about Ukraine. But
So let-
again, the creation of the flower with the shading and the light and the petals, the way the movement in the flower is amazing. It really, really is.
Yeah. I agree totally. Let me just end with one quote from Thomas. It says, art is something seen about something unseen. And I would say for sure that this conversation about Ali's work should emphasize that for all of you, that there is so much in the art itself that is unseen within us that we're now invited to engage with in a very meaningful way. Ali, you were fantastic. Lorie, thank you so much.
Oh, thank
Glad
you
it
so much
happened.
for
And it's
inviting me.
oh, joy. But it is, at the end of the day, not only an affirmation of friendship, but I think an affirmation of the gift of life.
Yes.
Thank you, Caroline.
Thank
Thank you
you.
for all your help.
Thank you.
Thank
Take
you.
care.
Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Have a good day.
Bye. You
Bye.
too. Bye-bye. Thanks for everybody.